Welcome to a journey back in time, where we uncover the truth behind one of history's most enigmatic figures. Genghis Khan. His name evokes images of relentless conquest and unyielding power, but who was the man behind the legend? In this documentary, we'll delve into the rise of a young Mongolian warrior who transformed a fragmented world into the largest contiguous empire in history. We'll explore the myths and realities of his conquests, the dramatic shifts in how he was perceived through the ages, and the indelible mark he left on the world. Please subscribe to more documentaries. Genghis Khan, born Temujin, c. 1162, August 1227, also called Genghis Khan, was the founder and first Khan of the Mongol Empire. After spending much of his life uniting the Mongol tribes, he initiated a series of military campaigns, conquering vast regions of China and Central Asia. Born between 1155 and 1167 and named Temujin, he was the eldest child of Yusugei, a Mongol chieftain of the Borjigin clan, and his wife Hoilan. When Temujin was 8, his father died, and his family was abandoned by their tribe. Reduced to near poverty, Temujin killed his older half-brother to secure his position in the family. His charismatic personality attracted his first followers and led to alliances with two prominent steppe leaders, Jamuka and Togrul. Together, they rescued Temujin's newlywed wife Borte, who had been kidnapped by raiders. As his reputation grew, his relationship with Jamuka deteriorated into open warfare. Temujin was severely defeated around 1187 and may have spent the following years as a subject of the Jin Dynasty. Re-emerging in 1196, he quickly began gaining power. Togrul viewed Temujin as a threat and launched a surprise attack on him in 1203. Temujin retreated, regrouped, and overpowered Togrul. After defeating the Naiman tribe and executing Jamuka, he was left as the sole ruler on the Mongolian steppe. Temujin formally adopted the title Genghis Khan, the meaning of which is uncertain, at an assembly in 1206. He carried out reforms to ensure long-term stability, transforming the Mongols' tribal structure into an integrated meritocracy dedicated to serving the ruling family. After thwarting a coup attempt by a powerful shaman, Genghis began consolidating his power. In 1209, he led a large-scale raid into the neighboring Western Xia, who agreed to Mongol terms the following year. He then launched a campaign against the Jin Dynasty, lasting 4 years and ending in 1215 with the capture of the Jin capital Zhongdu. His general Jib annexed the Central Asian state of Kara Kaitai in 1218. Genghis was provoked to invade the Khwarezmian Empire the following year by the execution of his envoys. The campaign toppled the Khwarezmian state and devastated the regions of Transoxiana and Khorasan, while Jib and his colleague Subutai led an expedition that reached Georgia and Kievan Rus. In 1227, Genghis died while subduing the rebellious Western Xia. After a 2-year interregnum, his third son and heir, Ogedei, ascended the throne in 1229. Genghis Khan remains a controversial figure. He was generous and intensely loyal to his followers but ruthless towards his enemies. He welcomed advice from diverse sources in his quest for world domination, believing that the shamanic supreme deity Tengri had destined him for this role. The Mongol army under Genghis killed millions of people, yet his conquests also facilitated unprecedented commercial and cultural exchange across a vast geographical area. He is remembered as a backwards, savage tyrant in Russia and the Arab world, while recent Western scholarship has begun reassessing its previous view of him as a barbarian warlord. He was posthumously deified in Mongolia. Modern Mongolians recognize him as the founding father of their nation. There is no standardized romanization system for Mongolian, leading to significant variations in the spelling of Mongolian names, which can result in pronunciations that differ considerably from the original. The title most commonly rendered as Genghis originates from the Mongolian, which can be romanized as Singhis. This was adapted into Chinese as Chenggizi, and into Persian as Ngizi. Since Arabic lacks a sound similar to T, represented by C in Mongolian and Persian romanizations, writers transcribe the name as Jenghiz, while Syriac authors use Sinjais. Besides, Genghis, introduced into English in the 18th century due to a misinterpretation of Persian sources, modern English spellings include Chingiz, Chingiz, Genghis, and Genghis. His birth name, Temujin, Timuzhen, is sometimes also spelled Temujin in English. When Genghis's grandson Kublai Khan established the Yuan dynasty in 1271, he awarded his grandfather the temple name Taizu, meaning Supreme Progenitor, and the posthumous name Shengwu Huangdi, meaning Holy Martial Emperor. Kublai's great-grandson Kublai Khan later expanded this title to Faishan Qian Shengwu Huangdi, meaning Interpreter of the Heavenly Law, Initiator of the Good Fortune, Holy Martial Emperor. The sources about Genghis Khan's life are numerous and come from more than a dozen languages across Eurasia, making it challenging for modern historians to compile comprehensive information. Most accounts of his early life and rise to power come from two Mongolian language sources, The Secret History of the Mongols and the Alten Dedder, Golden Book. Although the latter is lost, it inspired two Chinese chronicles, the 14th century history of Yuan and the Shengwu Qingjing Lu, campaigns of Genghis Khan. The history of Yuan offers detailed accounts of individual campaigns and figures but is poorly edited, while the Shengwu Qingjing Lu is more chronological but lacks criticism of Genghis and contains occasional errors. The secret history survived through Chinese transliterations in the 14th and 15th centuries. Its historicity has been debated. 20th century sinologist Arthur Waley viewed it as a literary work with no historical value, but recent historians consider it more credible. While the work's chronology is suspect and some passages were altered for narrative purposes, the secret history is valued for its critical portrayal of Genghis Khan, presenting him as indecisive and having a fear of dogs, and recounting taboo events like his fratricide and the potential illegitimacy of his son Joki. Several Persian chronicles also survive, showing a range of attitudes toward Genghis Khan and the Mongols. Minhaj-i-Siraj Juzjani and Adamalik Javani wrote their histories in 1260. Juzjani, who witnessed Mongol brutality, reflects hostility in his chronicle. In contrast, Javani, who had visited Mongolia twice and held a high position in a Mongol successor state, was more sympathetic and provides the most reliable account of Genghis Khan's western campaigns. The most significant Persian source is the Jami al-Tawarik, Compendium of Chronicles, by Rashid al-Din, commissioned by Genghis's descendant Ghazan in the early 14th century. Rashid had privileged access to confidential Mongol sources like the Alten Dedder and Mongol oral tradition experts, though he censored some details as he was writing an official chronicle. Many other contemporary histories include additional information about Genghis Khan and the Mongols, though their neutrality and reliability are often questionable. Chinese sources include chronicles of the dynasties conquered by the Mongols and Song diplomat Zhao Hong, who visited the Mongols in 1221. Arabic sources include a biography of the Khwarezmian Prince Jalal al-Din by his companion al-Nasawi. There are also later Christian chronicles, such as the Georgian Chronicles, and works by European travelers like Carpini and Marco Polo. The exact year of Temujin's birth is debated, with historians proposing 1155, 1162, or 1167. Some traditions place his birth in the year of the pig, which was either 1155 or 1167. While 1155 is supported by Zhao Hong and Rashid al-Din, other major sources like the History of Yuan and Shengwu favor 1162. The 1167 date, preferred by sinologist Paul Pelliot, comes from a minor source, a text by the Yuan artist Yang Weizhen, and aligns better with Genghis Khan's life events than 1155, which suggests he did not have children until after 30 and continued campaigning into his 70s. Most historians accept 1162, though Paul Rachnevsky noted that Temujin might not have known his exact birth year. The secret history records his birth location as Deluan Bulldog on the Onon River, but this is debated, with possible locations including Dadal in Khentai province or southern Aganbari at Okrug in Russia. Temujin was born into the Borjigin clan of the Mongol tribe to Yasugyi, a chieftain who claimed descent from the legendary warlord Bodinchar Munkhag, and his principal wife Hoilan, originally of the Okanad clan, whom Yasugyi had abducted from her Merkit bridegroom Chilida. The origin of his birth name is debated. Early traditions state that Yasugyi named his son Temujin after a successful campaign against the Tatars, celebrating with this name, while later traditions connect the name Temujin to the root Timur, meaning iron, suggesting it could mean blacksmith. Several legends are associated with Temujin's birth. The most prominent one is that he was born clutching a blood clot, a symbol in Asian folklore indicating the child would be a warrior. Other legends claim that Huilin was impregnated by a ray of light, a story echoing the myth of the Borjigin ancestor Alan Gua. After Temujin, Yasujii and Huilin had 3 younger sons, Khazar, Hakian, and Temuj, and a daughter, Temulin. Temujin also had 2 half-brothers, Better and Belgudii, from Yasujii's second wife Sachajul, whose identity is uncertain. The siblings grew up at Yasujii's main camp on the Onan River, where they learned horseback riding and archery. At the age of 8, Temujin's father arranged for him to be betrothed to Borte, the daughter of an Anjurat chieftain named Day Sechin. This betrothal was meant to secure a powerful alliance for Yasujii. To meet the high bride price, Day Sechin demanded that Temujin stay in his household to work off the future debt. Yasujii agreed to this condition, but on his way home, he asked for a meal from a band of Tatars he encountered, relying on the steppe tradition of hospitality. The Tatars, recognizing their old enemy, poisoned Yasujii's food. He became ill but managed to return home and, near death, requested his retainer Munglik to retrieve Temujin from the Anjurat. He died shortly after. Yasujii's death disrupted the unity of his people, including members of the Borjigin, Tayikid, and other clans. With Temujin only around 10 and Better 2 years older, neither was deemed old enough to lead. The Tayikid faction excluded Huilin from ancestor worship ceremonies following a ruler's death and abandoned her camp. The secret history indicates that the entire Borjigin clan followed suit despite Huilin's attempts to appeal to their honor. Rashid al-Din and the Xingwu Qingjinglu suggest that Yasujii's brothers supported the widow. It's possible Huilin might have refused Levirate marriage with one of them, leading to later tensions, or that the secret history exaggerated the situation. Most sources agree that Yasujii's people favored the Taykids, leaving Huilin's family to face a harsher life. They adopted a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, collecting roots and nuts, hunting small animals, and fishing. As the children grew older, tensions arose. Both Temujin and Better had claims to their father's legacy. Temujin was the child of Yasujii's chief wife, but Better was older. There was also the possibility that Better could marry Huilin and become Temujin's stepfather. Friction, exacerbated by disputes over hunting spoils, led to Temujin and his younger brother Khazar ambushing and killing Better. This act, which was omitted from official chronicles, is detailed in the secret history, which notes that Huilin reproached her sons. Better's younger full brother Belgudii did not seek revenge and became one of Temujin's most trusted followers, alongside Khazar. During this period, Temujin developed a close friendship with Jamukha, another boy of aristocratic background. They exchanged gifts and swore the Anda Pact, the Mongol blood brotherhood oath, at the age of 11. Temujin faced multiple instances of imprisonment due to the lack of allies. Captured by the Taykids, he escaped during a feast and sought refuge first in the Onan and then with Sorkinshira, who had seen him in the river and did not raise the alarm. Sorkinshira sheltered Temujin for 3 days at great personal risk before helping him escape. On another occasion, Temujin was assisted by Bowarshu, a young man who helped him recover stolen horses. Bowarshu later joined Temujin's camp as his first Nokar, personal companion, PL Nokad. These events, highlighted in the secret history, underscore Genghis Khan's personal charisma as emphasized by its author. Temujin, reaching the age of 15, returned to Day Sechin to marry Borte. Day Sechin was pleased to see his son-in-law alive and agreed to the marriage. He accompanied the newlyweds back to Temujin's camp, where his wife Khotan presented Huilin with a valuable sable cloak. Temujin, seeking to establish connections, decided to regift the cloak to Togrul, Khan of the Kharig tribe, who had been an ally of Yasujii and had sworn the Anda Pact with him. Togrul, ruling a vast area in central Mongolia and distrusting many of his followers, was pleased with the gift and welcomed Temujin into his protection. This alliance allowed Temujin to build a following, including Nokad such as Jelm. Soon after, around 300 Merkits raided Temujin's camp seeking revenge for Yasujii's abduction of Huilin. Temujin and his brothers hid on Birkin Kaldun Mountain, but Borte and Sachajul were abducted. Borte was given in marriage to Chilida's younger brother, in accordance with Levirate law. Temujin sought help from Togrul and his childhood friend Jamukha, now chief of the Jataran tribe. Both agreed to raise armies of 20,000 warriors, and under Jamukha's command, the campaign to recover Borte was successful. Borte, now pregnant, was rescued and gave birth to a son, Joki. Although Temujin raised Joki as his own, there were always questions about his paternity. Rashid al-Din's account avoids mentioning these doubts to protect the family's reputation. Over the next 15 years, Temujin and Borte had 3 more sons, Chagatai, Ogidii, and Talyui, and 4 more daughters, Chechiagan, Alaka, Tumulun, and Al-Altan. During this time, Temujin and Jamukha camped together for a year and a half, renewing their Anda Pact and sharing close ties. However, tensions developed, possibly due to a cryptic remark made by Jamukha. Temujin, advised by Huilin and Borte, began to build his independent following, attracting support from 41 leaders and many commoners, including Subutai and others from the Uriankai, the Barulas, the Okanuds, among others. Temujin's reputation for fairness and generosity, along with shamanic prophecies, drew people to him. Temujin was eventually acclaimed Khan of the Mongols by his followers. While Togrul supported his rise, Jamukha felt resentful, leading to a battle at Dalan Baljit around 1187. The battle ended in Temujin's defeat, although later chroniclers offer conflicting accounts about the outcome. Modern historians, such as Rachnevsky and Timothy May, suggest that Temujin might have spent a significant part of the decade following Dalan Baljit as a servant of the Jurchen Jin Dynasty in North China. Zhao Hong recorded that Temujin was a slave of the Jin, a claim once seen as nationalistic arrogance but now considered credible. This period of Temujin's life is not well documented by Mongol sources, as it would have been seen as detrimental to Mongol prestige. Zhao Hong's account, free from such biases, provides a plausible explanation for Temujin's activities during this time. The sources do not agree on the events of Temujin's return to the steppe. In early summer 1196, he participated in a joint campaign with the Jin against the Tatars, who had begun to act contrary to Jin interests. As a reward, the Jin awarded him the honorific Chayuti Kuri, the meaning of which probably approximated commander of hundreds in Jurchen. At around the same time, he assisted Togrul with reclaiming the lordship of the Kurite, which had been usurped by one of Togrul's relatives with the support of the powerful Naiman tribe. The actions of 1196 fundamentally changed Temujin's position in the steppe. Although nominally still Togrul's vassal, he was de facto an equal ally. Jamukha behaved cruelly following his victory at Dalan Baljit. He allegedly boiled 70 prisoners alive and humiliated the corpses of leaders who had opposed him. A number of disaffected followers, including Yasujiai's follower Monglig and his sons, defected to Temujin as a consequence. They were also probably attracted by his newfound wealth. Temujin subdued the disobedient Jurchen tribe that had previously offended him at a feast and refused to participate in the Tatar campaign. After executing their leaders, he had Belgudii symbolically break a leading Jurchen's back in a staged wrestling match in retribution. This latter incident, which contravened Mongol customs of justice, was only noted by the author of the Secret History, who openly disapproved. These events occurred around 1197. During the following years, Temujin and Togrul campaigned against the Merkits, the Naimans, and the Tatars, sometimes separately and sometimes together. Around 1201, a collection of dissatisfied tribes including the Anjurat, the Tayakid, and the Tatars swore to break the domination of the Borjigin-Kurite alliance, electing Jamukha as their leader and Gurkhan, lit. Khan of the tribes. After some initial successes, Temujin and Togrul routed this loose confederation at Yedikunin, and Jamukha was forced to beg for Togrul's clemency. Desiring complete supremacy in eastern Mongolia, Temujin defeated first the Tayakid and then, in 1202, the Tatars. After both campaigns, he executed the clan leaders and took the remaining warriors into his service. These included Sorkin Shira, who had come to his aid previously, and a young warrior named Jeeb, who, by killing Temujin's horse and refusing to hide that fact, had displayed martial ability and personal courage. The absorption of the Tatars left three military powers in the steppe: the Naimans in the west, the Mongols in the east, and the Karaite in between. Seeking to cement his position, Temujin proposed that his son Joki marry one of Togrul's daughters. Led by Togrul's son Sengam, the Karaite elite believed the proposal to be an attempt to gain control over their tribe, while the doubts over Joki's parentage would have offended them further. In addition, Jamuka drew attention to the threat Temujin posed to the traditional steppe aristocracy by his habit of promoting commoners to high positions, which subverted social norms. Yielding eventually to these demands, Togrul attempted to lure his vassal into an ambush, but his plans were overheard by two herdsmen. Temujin was able to gather some of his forces, but was soundly defeated at the Battle of Kalakaljit Sands. Retreating southeast to Baljuna, an unidentified lake or river, Temujin waited for his scattered forces to regroup. Bawarsha had lost his horse and was forced to flee on foot, while Temujin's badly wounded son Ogidi had been transported and tended to by Borakula, a leading warrior. Temujin called in every possible ally and swore a famous oath of loyalty, later known as the Baljuna Covenant, to his faithful followers, which subsequently granted them great prestige. The oath-takers of Baljuna were a very heterogeneous group, men from 9 different tribes who included Christians, Muslims, and Buddhists, united only by loyalty to Temujin and to each other. This group became a model for the later empire, termed a proto-government of a proto-nation by historian John Mann. The Baljuna Covenant was omitted from the secret history, as the group was predominantly non-Mongol. The author presumably wished to downplay the role of other tribes. A ruse de guerre involving Khazar allowed the Mongols to ambush the Karaite at the Jair Heights, but though the ensuing battle still lasted 3 days, it ended in a decisive victory for Temujin. Togrul and Sengam were both forced to flee, and while the latter escaped to Tibet, Togrul was killed by a Naiman who did not recognize him. Temujin sealed his victory by absorbing the Karaite elite into his own tribe. He took the Princess Abaka as a wife, and married her sister Sorgatani and niece Dokas to his youngest son Talyui. The ranks of the Naimans had swelled due to the arrival of Jamuka and others defeated by the Mongols, and they prepared for war. Temujin was informed of these events by Alakash, the sympathetic ruler of the Ongud tribe. In May 1204, at the Battle of Chakramaud in the Altai Mountains, the Naimans were decisively defeated. Their leader Tayang Khan was killed, and his son Kuklug was forced to flee west. The Merkits were decimated later that year, while Jamuka, who had abandoned the Naimans at Chakramaud, was betrayed to Temujin by companions who were executed for their lack of loyalty. According to the secret history, Jamuka convinced his childhood Anda to execute him honorably. Other accounts state that he was killed by dismemberment. Now sole ruler of the steppe, Temujin held a large assembly called a Kurultai at the source of the Onon River in 1206. Here, he formally adopted the title Genghis Khan, the etymology and meaning of which have been much debated. Some commentators hold that the title had no meaning, simply representing Temujin's eschewal of the traditional Gurkhan title, which had been accorded to Jamuka and was thus of lesser worth. Another theory suggests that the word Genghis bears connotations of strength, firmness, hardness, or righteousness. A third hypothesis proposes that the title is related to the Turkic Tanjais, ocean. The title Genghis Khan would mean master of the ocean, and as the ocean was believed to surround the earth, the title thus ultimately implied universal ruler. Having attained control over 1 million people, Genghis Khan began a social revolution, in May's words. As traditional tribal systems had primarily evolved to benefit small clans and families, they were unsuitable as the foundations for larger states and had been the downfall of previous steppe confederations. Genghis thus began a series of administrative reforms designed to suppress the power of tribal affiliations and to replace them with unconditional loyalty to the Khan and the ruling family. As most of the traditional tribal leaders had been killed during his rise to power, Genghis was able to reconstruct the Mongol social hierarchy in his favor. The highest tier was occupied solely by his and his brothers' families, who became known as the Altan Uruk, lit. Golden family, or Shagan Yasin, lit. White bone, underneath them came the Kara Yasin, lit. Black bone, sometimes Karachu, composed of the surviving pre-empire aristocracy and the most important of the new families. To break any concept of tribal loyalty, Mongol society was reorganized into a military decimal system. Every man between the age of 15 and 70 was conscripted into a minkan, PL Minkad, a unit of 1,000 soldiers, which was further subdivided into units of hundreds, Jagan, PL Jaghat, and tens, Arban, PL Arbat. The units also encompassed each man's household, meaning that each military minkan was supported by a minkan of households in what May has termed a military-industrial complex. Each minkan operated as both a political and social unit, while the warriors of defeated tribes were dispersed to different minkad to make it difficult for them to rebel as a single body. This was intended to ensure the disappearance of old tribal identities, replacing them with loyalty to the Great Mongol State, and to commanders who had gained their rank through merit and loyalty to the Khan. This particular reform proved extremely effective. Even after the division of the Mongol Empire, fragmentation never happened along tribal lines. Instead, the descendants of Genghis continued to reign unchallenged, in some cases until as late as the 1700s, and even powerful non-imperial dynasts such as Timur and Edigu were compelled to rule from behind a puppet ruler of his lineage. Genghis Khan's senior Nokhad were appointed to the highest ranks and received the greatest honors. Bowarshu and Macaulay were each given 10,000 men to lead as commanders of the right and left wings of the army respectively. The other Nokhad were each given commands of one of the 95 minkad. Reflecting Genghis' meritocratic ideals, many of these men were born to low social status. Rachnevsky cited Jelm and Subutai, the sons of blacksmiths, in addition to a carpenter, a shepherd, and even the two herdsmen who had warned Temujin of Togrul's plans in 1203. As a special privilege, Genghis allowed certain loyal commanders to retain the tribal identities of their units. Alakish of the Angud was allowed to retain 5,000 warriors of his tribe because his son had entered into an alliance pact with Genghis, marrying his daughter Alaka. A key tool underpinning these reforms was the expansion of the Kashig bodyguard. After Temujin defeated Togrul in 1203, he had appropriated this Kharit institution in a minor form, but at the 1206 Kurultai, its numbers were greatly expanded, from 1,150 to 10,000 men. The Kashid was not only the Khan's bodyguard but his household staff, a military academy, and the center of governmental administration. All the warriors in this elite corps were brothers or sons of military commanders and were essentially hostages. The members of the Kashid nevertheless received special privileges and direct access to the Khan, whom they served and who in return evaluated their capabilities and their potential to govern or command. Commanders such as Subutai, Kormakan, and Baiju all started out in the Kashid before being given command of their own forces. From 1204 to 1209, Genghis Khan was predominantly focused on consolidating and maintaining his new nation. He faced a challenge from the shaman Kopju, whose father Munglik had been allowed to marry Hoilan after he defected to Temujin. Kopju, who had proclaimed Temujin as Genghis Khan and taken the Tingris title, Teb Tingjeri, lit. Holy Heavenly, on account of his sorcery, was very influential among the Mongol commoners and sought to divide the imperial family. Genghis's brother Khazar was the first of Kopju's targets. Always distrusted by his brother, Khazar was humiliated and almost imprisoned on false charges before Hoilan intervened by publicly reprimanding Genghis. Nevertheless, Kopju's power steadily increased, and he publicly shamed Temujin, Genghis's youngest brother, when he attempted to intervene. Borte saw that Kopju was a threat to Genghis's power and warned her husband, who still superstitiously revered the shaman but now recognized the political threat he posed. Genghis allowed Temujin to arrange Kopju's death and then usurped the shaman's position as the Mongols' highest spiritual authority. During these years, the Mongols imposed their control on surrounding areas. Genghis dispatched Joki northwards in 1207 to subjugate the Hoyin Urgen, a collection of tribes on the edge of the Siberian taiga. Having secured a marriage alliance with the Oirats and defeated the Yenisei Kyrgyz, he took control of the region's trade in grain and furs, as well as its gold mines. Mongol armies also rode westwards, defeating the Nayman-Murkid alliance on the river Irtysh in late 1208. Their Khan was killed and Kuklug fled into Central Asia. Led by Barchek, the Uyghurs freed themselves from the suzerainty of the Kara-Kaitai and pledged themselves to Genghis in 1211 as the first sedentary society to submit to the Mongols. The Mongols had started raiding the border settlements of the Tengut-led Western Xia Kingdom in 1205, ostensibly in retaliation for allowing Sengam, Togrul's son, refuge. More prosaic explanations include rejuvenating the depleted Mongol economy with an influx of fresh goods and livestock, or simply subjugating a semi-hostile state to protect the nascent Mongol nation. Most Xia troops were stationed along the southern and eastern borders of the kingdom to guard against attacks from the Song and Jin dynasties respectively, while its northern border relied only on the Gobi Desert for protection. After a raid in 1207 sacked the Xia fortress of Wulahai, Genghis decided to personally lead a full-scale invasion in 1209. Wulahai was captured again in May and the Mongols advanced on the capital Zhongxing, modern-day Yinchuan, but suffered a reverse against a Xia army. After a 2-month stalemate, Genghis broke the deadlock with a feigned retreat. The Xia forces were deceived out of their defensive positions and overpowered. Although Zhongxing was now mostly undefended, the Mongols lacked any siege equipment better than crude battering rams and were unable to progress the siege. The Xia requested aid from the Jin, but Emperor Zhongzong rejected the plea. Genghis's attempt to redirect the Yellow River into the city with a dam initially worked, but the poorly constructed earthworks broke, possibly breached by the Xia, in January 1210, and the Mongol camp was flooded, forcing them to retreat. A peace treaty was soon formalized. The Xia Emperor Xianzong submitted and handed over tribute, including his daughter Shaka, in exchange for the Mongol withdrawal. Wanyan Yongji usurped the Jin throne in 1209. He had previously served on the steppe frontier, and Genghis greatly disliked him. When asked to submit and pay the annual tribute to Yongji in 1210, Genghis instead mocked the emperor, spat, and rode away from the Jin envoy, a challenge that meant war. Despite the possibility of being outnumbered 8-1 by 600,000 Jin soldiers, Genghis had prepared to invade the Jin since learning in 1206 that the state was racked by internal instabilities. Genghis had two aims: to take vengeance for past wrongs committed by the Jin, foremost among which was the death of Ambagai Khan in the mid-12th century, and to win the vast amounts of plunder his troops and vassals expected. After calling for a Kurultai in March 1211, Genghis launched his invasion of Jin China in May, reaching the outer ring of Jin defenses the following month. These border fortifications were guarded by Alakash's Ongud, who allowed the Mongols to pass without difficulty. The three-pronged Shivachi aimed both to plunder and burn a vast area of Jin territory to deprive them of supplies and popular legitimacy, and to secure the mountain passes which allowed access to the North China Plain. The Jin lost numerous towns and were hindered by a series of defections, the most prominent of which led directly to Makali's victory at the Battle of Wanerzui in autumn 1211. The campaign was halted in 1212 when Genghis was wounded by an arrow during the unsuccessful siege of Shijing, modern Datong. Following this failure, Genghis set up a corps of siege engineers, which recruited 500 Jin experts over the next 2 years. Genghis Khan had reached a critical point in his campaign. His forces had advanced into northern Jin territory, capturing key areas and putting significant pressure on the Jin capital, Zhongdu, modern-day Beijing. The Jin administration began to crumble as internal strife erupted. Hashihu, the commander at Shijing, staged a coup in Zhongdu, killing the Jin Emperor Yongji and placing his puppet ruler, Xianzong, on the throne. This chaotic situation worked in Genghis's favor as the Jin government disintegrated further. However, despite their successes, the Mongol army faced severe issues, including disease and famine, leading to drastic measures like cannibalism, as noted by Carpini, though this account might be exaggerated. Facing these hardships and the possibility of a prolonged siege, Genghis decided to open peace negotiations, securing tribute that included horses, slaves, a Jin princess, and valuable goods before lifting the siege and returning to Mongolia in May 1214. Meanwhile, the northern Jin territories were devastated by the plague and ongoing conflicts. Xianzong moved the Jin capital south to Kaifeng, hoping to regroup and potentially resume the war. Genghis, suspecting that this move was a strategic ploy, believed that the peace treaty terms were breached and prepared to return to Zhengdu. He began preparations for another assault, only now fully committed to conquering northern China. Macaulay, a trusted general, captured several towns in Liaodong during the winter of 1214–15. Despite the inhabitants of Zhengdu surrendering on May 31, 1215, the city was brutally sacked. Genghis returned to Mongolia in early 1216, leaving Macaulay in command in China. Macaulay continued to wage a harsh yet effective campaign against the unstable Jin regime until his death in 1223. During the years 1216 to 1218, Genghis faced several challenges, including uprisings within his own territories and conflicts with the Kara Kaitai. Korchi, a governor of the Huayin Urjin tribes, faced a rebellion and was captured, leading Genghis to send his son Joki and a Dorbic commander to restore order. The campaign was successful, and control was regained over this crucial region. Meanwhile, Kuklug, a Naiman prince who had seized control of the Kara Kaitai dynasty, was ousted by Genghis's forces. Jebe, leading a Mongol army, undermined Kuklug's rule and eventually captured and executed him, restoring stability to the region. Genghis then turned his attention to the Khwarezmian Empire, which was ruled by Muhammad II. Relations between the Mongols and the Khwarezmians deteriorated when the governor of Otra massacred a Mongol caravan and Muhammad killed a Mongol envoy. Infuriated, Genghis resolved to invade Khwarezmia. His forces swiftly overwhelmed the Khwarezmian cities, including the siege of Otra and the capture of Samarkand and Bokhara. Muhammad fled but was eventually pursued by Mongol generals Jebe and Subutai. After Muhammad's death, Jalal al-Din took over but was eventually defeated by the Mongols, leading to the further destruction of cities in Khorasan by Genghis's forces. In 1221, Genghis abruptly halted his Central Asian campaigns and began his return journey. He abandoned plans to move through India due to the adverse climate and the unfavorable omens. Instead, he focused on consolidating his empire and addressing rebellions in Khorasan. During his return, Genghis restructured the administration of conquered territories and engaged with the Taoist patriarch Changchun, granting privileges to Taoists. This period marked a shift in his focus from immediate military conquests to the stabilization and governance of his vast empire. The usual reason given for the halting of the campaign is that the Western Xia, having declined to provide auxiliaries for the 1219 invasion, had additionally disobeyed Macaulay in his campaign against the remaining Jin in Shaanxi. May has disputed this, arguing that the Xia fought in concert with Macaulay until his death in 1223, when, frustrated by Mongol control and sensing an opportunity with Genghis campaigning in Central Asia, they ceased fighting. In either case, Genghis initially attempted to resolve the situation diplomatically, but when the Xia elite failed to come to an agreement on the hostages they were to send to the Mongols, he lost patience. Returning to Mongolia in early 1225, Genghis spent the year in preparation for a campaign against them. This began in the first months of 1226 with the capture of Karakoto on the Xia's western border. The invasion proceeded apace. Genghis ordered that the cities of the Gansu corridor be sacked one by one, granting clemency only to a few. Having crossed the Yellow River in autumn, the Mongols besieged present-day Lingwu, located just 30 kilometers south of the Xia capital Zhongxing, in November. On December 4th, Genghis decisively defeated a Xia relief army. The Khan left the siege of the capital to his generals and moved southwards with Subutai to plunder and secure Jin territories. Genghis fell from his horse while hunting in the winter of 1226–27 and became increasingly ill during the following months. This slowed the siege of Zhongxing's progress, as his sons and commanders urged him to end the campaign and return to Mongolia to recover, arguing that the Xia would still be there another year. Incensed by insults from Xia's leading commander, Genghis insisted that the siege be continued. He died on either 18 or August 25, 1227, but his death was kept a closely guarded secret and Zhongxing, unaware, fell the following month. The city was put to the sword and its population was treated with extreme savagery. The Xia civilization was essentially extinguished in what man described as a very successful ethnocide. the exact nature of the Khan's death has been the subject of intense speculation. Rashid al-Din and the history of Yuan mention he suffered from an illness, possibly malaria, typhus, or bubonic plague. Marco Polo claimed that he was shot by an arrow during a siege, while Carpini reported that Genghis was struck by lightning. Legend sprang up around the event. The most famous recounts how the beautiful Gurbalchan, formerly the Xia emperor's wife, injured Genghis's genitals with a dagger during sex. After his death, Genghis was transported back to Mongolia and buried on or near the sacred Birkin Khaldun peak in the Kentiai Mountains, on a site he had chosen years before. Specific details of the funeral procession and burial were not made public knowledge. The mountain, declared at Korig, lit. Great Taboo, i.e. prohibited zone, was out of bounds to all but its Uriankai guard. When Ogdi acceded to the throne in 1229, the grave was honored with 3 days of offerings and the sacrifice of 30 maidens. Rakhnevsky theorized that the Mongols, who had no knowledge of embalming techniques, may have buried the Khan in the Ordos to avoid his body decomposing in the summer heat while en route to Mongolia. Atwood rejects this hypothesis. The tribes of the Mongol steppe had no fixed succession system, but often defaulted to some form of ultimogeniture, succession of the youngest son, because he would have had the least time to gain a following for himself and needed the help of his father's inheritance. However, this type of inheritance applied only to property, not to titles. The secret history records that Genghis chose his successor while preparing for the Khwarezmian campaigns in 1219. Rashid al-Din, on the other hand, states that the decision came before Genghis's final campaign against the Xia. Regardless of the date, there were 5 possible candidates: Genghis's 4 sons and his youngest brother Temujin, who had the weakest claim and who was never seriously considered. Even though there was a strong possibility Jochi was illegitimate, Genghis was not particularly concerned by this. Nevertheless, he and Jochi became increasingly estranged over time, due to Jochi's preoccupation with his own appanage. After the siege of Gurganj, where he only reluctantly participated in besieging the wealthy city that would become part of his territory, he failed to give Genghis the normal share of the booty, which exacerbated the tensions. Genghis was angered by Jochi's refusal to return to him in 1223, and was considering sending Ogdi and Chagatai to bring him to heel when news came that Jochi had died from an illness. Chagatai's attitude towards Jochi's possible succession: he had termed his elder brother a murked bastard, and had brawled with him in front of their father, led Genghis to view him as uncompromising, arrogant, and narrow-minded, despite his great knowledge of Mongol legal customs. His elimination left Ogdi and Talyui as the 2 primary candidates. Talyui was unquestionably superior in military terms. His campaign in Khorasan had broken the Khwarezmian Empire, while his elder brother was far less able as a commander. Ogdi was also known to drink excessively even by Mongol standards. It eventually caused his death in 1241. However, he possessed talents all his brothers lacked. He was generous and generally well-liked. Aware of his own lack of military skill, he was able to trust his capable subordinates, and unlike his elder brothers, compromise on issues. He was also more likely to preserve Mongol traditions than Talyui, whose wife Sorgatani, herself a Nestorian Christian, was a patron of many religions including Islam. Ogdi was thus recognized as the heir to the Mongol throne. Serving as regent after Genghis's death, Talyui established a precedent for the customary traditions after a Khan's death. These included the halting of all military offensives involving Mongol troops, the establishment of a lengthy mourning period overseen by the regent, and the holding of a Kurultai which would nominate successors and select them. For Talyui, this presented an opportunity. He was still a viable candidate for succession and had the support of the family of Jochi. Any general Kurultai, attended by the commanders Genghis had promoted and honored, would however observe their former ruler's desires without question and appoint Ogdi as ruler. It has been suggested that Talyui's reluctance to hold the Kurultai was driven by the knowledge of the threat it posed to his ambitions. In the end, Talyui had to be persuaded by the advisor Yeluchutsai to hold the Kurultai. In 1229, it crowned Ogdi as Khan, with Talyui in attendance. Borte, whom Temujin married around 1178, remained his senior wife. She gave birth to 4 sons and 5 daughters, all of whom became influential figures in the empire. Genghis granted Borte's sons lands and property through the Mongol appanage system, while he secured marriage alliances by marrying her daughters to important families. Her children were Kojin, a daughter born around 1179, who later married Butu of the Akhirs, one of Temujin's earliest and closest supporters and the widower of Temujin. Joki, a son born around 1182 after Borte's kidnapping, whose paternity was suspect even though Temujin accepted his legitimacy. Joki predeceased Genghis, his appanage, along the Irtysh River and extending into Siberia, evolved into the Golden Horde. Chagatai, a son born around 1184, his appanage was the former Kara-Kaitai territory surrounding Almalai in Turkestan, which became the Chagatai Khanate. Ogidi, a son born around 1186, who received lands in Dzungaria and succeeded his father as ruler of the empire. Chechiagan, a daughter born around 1188, whose marriage to Turelchi secured the loyalty of the Oirids to the north. Alaka, a daughter born around 1190, who married several members of the Ongud tribe between 1207 and 1225. Tumulan, a daughter born around 1192, who married Chigu of the Anjarat tribe. Talyui, a son born around 1193, who received lands near the Altai Mountains as an appanage. 2 of his sons, Monk and Kublai, later ruled the empire, while another, Hulagu, founded the Ilkhanate. Al-Altan, a daughter born around 1196, married the powerful Uyghur ruler Barchik. Shortly after the accession of Gayub Khan in the 1240s, she was tried and executed on charges that were later suppressed. After Borte's final childbirth, Temujin began acquiring a number of junior wives through conquest. These wives had all previously been princesses or queens, and Temujin married them to demonstrate his political ascendancy. They included the Karaite princess Ibaka, the Tatar sisters Yusujin and Yesue, Tsulan, a Merkit, Gerbisu, the queen of the Nayman Tian Khan, and 2 Chinese princesses, Chaka and Chigwa, of the Western Xia and Jin dynasties respectively. The children of these junior wives were always subservient to those of Borte, with daughters married off to seal lesser alliances and sons, such as Tsulan's child Kaljin, never a candidate for succession. No eyewitness description or contemporaneous depiction of Genghis Khan survives. The Persian chronicler Juzjani and the Song diplomat Zhao Hong provide the 2 earliest descriptions. Both recorded that he was tall and strong with a powerful stature. Zhao wrote that Genghis had a broad brow and long beard, while Juzjani commented on his cat's eyes and lack of gray hair. The secret history records that Borte's father remarked on his flashing eyes and lively face when meeting him. Atwood has suggested that many of Genghis Khan's values, especially the emphasis he placed on an orderly society, derive from his turbulent youth. He valued loyalty above all, and mutual fidelity became a cornerstone of his new nation. Genghis did not find it difficult to gain the allegiance of others. He was superbly charismatic even as a youth, as shown by the number of people who left existing social roles behind to join him. Although his trust was hard to earn, if he felt loyalty was assured, he granted his total confidence in return. Recognized for his generosity towards his followers, Genghis unhesitatingly rewarded previous assistants. The Nokad most honored at the 1206 Kurultai were those who had accompanied him since the beginning, and those who had sworn the Baljuna covenant with him at his lowest point. He took responsibility for the families of Nokad killed in battle or who otherwise fell on hard times by raising a tax to provide them with clothing and sustenance. Heaven grew weary of the excessive pride and luxury in China. I am from the barbaric north. I wear the same clothing and eat the same food as the cowherds and horse herders. We make the same sacrifices and we share our riches. I look upon the nation as a newborn child and I care for my soldiers as if they were my brothers. Genghis Khan's letter to Changchun. The principal source of steppe wealth was post-battle plunder, of which a leader would normally claim a large share. Genghis eschewed this custom, choosing instead to divide booty equally between himself and all his men. Disliking any form of luxury, he extolled the simple life of the nomad in a letter to Changchun, and objected to being addressed with obsequious flattery. He encouraged his companions to address him informally, give him advice, and criticize his mistakes. Genghis's openness to criticism and willingness to learn saw him seeking the knowledge of family members, companions, neighboring states, and enemies. He sought and gained knowledge of sophisticated weaponry from China and the Muslim world, appropriated the Uyghur alphabet with the help of the captured scribe Tatatanga, and employed numerous specialists across legal, commercial, and administrative fields. He also understood the need for a smooth succession, and modern historians agree he showed good judgment in choosing his heir. Although he is today renowned for his military conquests, very little is known about Genghis's personal generalship. His skills were more suited to identifying potential commanders. His institution of a meritocratic command structure gave the Mongol army military superiority, even though it was not technologically or tactically innovative. The army that Genghis created was characterized by its draconian discipline, its ability to gather and use military intelligence efficiently, a mastery of psychological warfare, and a willingness to be utterly ruthless. Genghis thoroughly enjoyed exacting vengeance on his enemies. The concept lay at the heart of Achi Karielku, good for good, evil for evil, the step code of justice. In exceptional circumstances, such as when Muhammad of Khwarezm executed his envoys, the need for vengeance overrode all other considerations. Genghis came to believe the supreme deity Tingri had ordained a great destiny for him. Initially, the bounds of this ambition were limited only to Mongolia, but as success followed success and the reach of the Mongol nation expanded, he and his followers came to believe he was embodied with Su, divine grace. Believing that he had an intimate connection with heaven, anyone who did not recognize his right to world power was treated as an enemy. This viewpoint allowed Genghis to rationalize any hypocritical or duplicitous moments on his own part, such as killing his Anda Jamukha or killing Nokad who wavered in their loyalties. Genghis Khan left a vast and controversial legacy. His unification of the Mongol tribes and his foundation of the largest contiguous state in world history permanently altered the worldview of European, Islamic, and East Asian civilizations, according to Atwood. His conquests enabled the creation of Eurasian trading systems unprecedented in their scale, which brought wealth and security to the tribes. Although he very likely did not codify the written body of laws known as the Great Yasa, he did reorganize the legal system and establish a powerful judicial authority under Shigi Kutuku. On the other hand, his conquests were ruthless and brutal. The prosperous civilizations of China, Central Asia, and Persia were devastated by the Mongol assaults, and underwent multi-generational trauma and suffering as a result. Perhaps Genghis's greatest failing was his inability to create a working succession system. His division of his empire into uppanages, meant to ensure stability, actually did the reverse, as local and statewide interests diverged and the empire began splitting into the Golden Horde, the Chagatai Khanate, the Ilkhanate, and the Yuan dynasty in the late 1200s. In the mid-1990s, the Washington Post acclaimed Genghis Khan as the man of the millennium, who embodied the half-civilized, half-savage duality of the human race. This complex image has remained prevalent in modern scholarship, with historians emphasizing both Genghis Khan's positive and negative contributions. For many centuries, Genghis was remembered in Mongolia as a religious figure, not a political one. After Altan Khan converted to Tibetan Buddhism in the late 1500s, Genghis was deified and given a central role in the Mongolian religious tradition. As a deity, Genghis drew upon Buddhist, shamanistic, and folk traditions. For example, he was defined as a new incarnation of a Chakravartin, idealized ruler like Ashoka, or a Vajrapani, the martial bodhisattva. He was connected genealogically to the Buddha and to ancient Buddhist kings. He was invoked during weddings and festivals, and he took a large role in ancestor veneration rituals. He also became the focus point of a sleeping hero legend, which says he will return to help the Mongol people in a time of great need. His cult was centered at the Namen Shigan Orden, 8 white yurts, today a mausoleum in Inner Mongolia, China. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, Genghis Khan began to be celebrated as the national hero of Mongolia. This recognition extended beyond Mongolia. During its occupation of Inner Mongolia, Imperial Japan funded the construction of a temple dedicated to Genghis Khan, and both the Kuomintang and the Chinese Communist Party utilized his memory to appeal to potential allies during the Chinese Civil War. This reverence persisted during World War II, when the Soviet-aligned Mongolian People's Republic promoted Genghis Khan to foster patriotic zeal against invaders. However, post-war attitudes shifted as he was viewed as a non-Russian hero who could serve as an anti-communist symbol. According to May, Genghis Khan was later denounced as a feudal and reactionary lord who exploited the people. His cult was repressed, the Uyghur script he favored was replaced by Cyrillic, and celebrations for his 800th birth anniversary in 1962 were cancelled following strong Soviet objections. Chinese historians, however, were generally more favorable toward Genghis Khan, and his role in the Sino-Soviet split remained minor. The policies of glasnost and perestroika in the 1980s facilitated the rehabilitation of Genghis Khan. Shortly after the 1990 revolution, Lenin Avenue in Ulaanbaatar was renamed Genghis Khan Avenue. Since then, Mongolia has named its international airport after Genghis Khan and erected a large statue in Sukbatar Square, which was renamed after him between 2013 and 2016. His image appears on various items, from postage stamps and high-value banknotes to brands of alcohol and toilet paper. In 2006, the Mongolian parliament even discussed the commercialization of his name through excessive advertising. Modern Mongolians tend to emphasize Genghis Khan's political and civil achievements over his military conquests. They view his destructive campaigns as products of their time, secondary to his contributions to Mongolian and world history. His policies, such as his use of the Kurultai, his establishment of the rule of law through an independent judiciary, and his human rights advancements, are considered foundational to the modern, democratic Mongolian state. Genghis Khan is idealized for making Mongolia a center of international culture and is recognized as the founding father of Mongolia. In the historical and modern Muslim world, Genghis Khan has been associated with various ideologies and beliefs. Initially, Islamic thought saw him as a herald of the impending Judgment Day, but as his descendants converted to Islam, he came to be viewed as an instrument of God's will, destined to strengthen the Muslim world by cleansing it of corruption. In post-Mongol Asia, Genghis Khan was a source of political legitimacy. His descendants were recognized as the rightful rulers, leading aspiring leaders to justify their rule by associating themselves with Genghis Khan or nominating his descendants as puppet rulers. Timur, who founded an empire in Central Asia, paid homage to Genghis Khan's descendants and exaggerated the prominence of his own ancestor, Karakar Noyan, depicting him as Genghis Khan's blood relative. Timur also married Genghis's descendants. Babur, the founder of the Mongol Empire in India, derived his authority from both Timur and Genghis Khan. Until the 18th century in Central Asia, Genghis Khan was considered the progenitor of the social order and was second only to the Prophet Muhammad in legal authority. In the Arab world, with the rise of Arab nationalism in the 19th century, Genghis Khan began to be viewed negatively. He is seen as the ultimate, accursed enemy, a barbarian who began the destruction of civilization, culminating in the siege of Baghdad in 1258 by his grandson Hulagu Khan. In Russia, Genghis Khan is viewed negatively, with the rule of the Golden Horde, known as the Tatar yoke, portrayed as backwards and destructive, blamed for Russia's flaws. His treatment in modern Central Asia and Turkey is more ambivalent, with other national heroes like Timur and the Seljuks being viewed more favorably due to his non-Muslim status. During the Yuan dynasty in China, Genghis Khan was revered as the creator of the nation. This reverence continued under the Ming dynasty and was restored by the Manchu Qing dynasty, who positioned themselves as his heirs. Early 20th century Chinese nationalism initially led to the denigration of Genghis Khan as a traumatic occupier, but he was later resurrected as a political symbol. Modern Chinese historiography has generally viewed Genghis Khan positively, portraying him as a Chinese hero. In contemporary Japan, Genghis Khan is known for the legend that he was originally Minamoto no Yoshitsune, a samurai hero who committed seppuku in 1189. The Western world, not directly affected by Genghis Khan, has had shifting views of him. In the 14th century, he was seen as a just and wise ruler in works by Marco Polo and Geoffrey Chaucer. By the 18th century, he embodied the stereotype of a tyrannical Oriental despot, and by the 20th century, he was seen as a barbarian warlord. Recent Western scholarship has become more nuanced, presenting Genghis Khan as a complex figure. As we traverse the complex tapestry of history woven by Genghis Khan, we see a figure who transcends mere legend and myth. From the steppes of Mongolia to the heart of the Arab world, from the annals of Russian history to the legacies in China and Japan, Genghis Khan's impact has been profound and multifaceted. He was a conqueror who reshaped the maps of continents, but also a visionary whose policies laid the groundwork for a nation's future. His empire's vast reach brought disparate cultures into contact, fostering exchanges that would shape the world for centuries. His legacy is not without its contradictions. He is remembered both as a brutal warrior and a pioneering statesman, both a symbol of destruction and a harbinger of unity. In Mongolia today, he is celebrated as a national hero, embodying the spirit and resilience of a people. His image adorns everything from monumental statues to everyday items, reflecting a profound reverence for his role in their history. Meanwhile, in other parts of the world, his memory is often more contested, colored by the suffering his campaigns inflicted and the complex interactions of his empire's successors. Yet, Genghis Khan remains a figure of enduring fascination and significance. His legacy challenges us to look beyond simplistic narratives and to appreciate the depth of his influence. Whether seen as a harbinger of chaos or a unifier of peoples, Genghis Khan's story invites us to explore the forces that shape human history and to understand the intricate ways in which one man's actions can reverberate across time and space. As we close this chapter of our exploration, we are reminded that history is never just about the past. It is a living, breathing dialogue that continues to evolve, shaped by how we choose to remember and interpret the figures who have come before us. Genghis Khan, with all his complexity, is a testament to this ongoing conversation, a figure whose legacy continues to inspire, provoke, and challenge us to rethink our understanding of the world. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life and legacy of Genghis Khan. We hope this exploration has deepened your appreciation for one of history's most enigmatic and influential figures. Until our next historical voyage, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep exploring the rich tapestry of our shared past. As we conclude our journey through the life and legacy of Genghis Khan, we hope you found this exploration as fascinating as we have. If you enjoyed this documentary and would like to see more in-depth stories from history, please give us a thumbs up and share this video with others who might be interested. Your support helps us continue bringing you high-quality content and exploring more captivating historical narratives. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest documentaries. We've got many more intriguing stories and historical explorations lined up, and we'd love for you to join us on this adventure. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.